So folks, today I'm going to show you how to cultivate microworm the easy way. Um, there are three species of microworm. There's the common microworm, there's Walter worm and banana worm. Now if you would like the Latin names of these, I would try and pronounce them, but I'm most probably not going to have much luck. Now the microworm is Panagrellus redivus. Walter worm is Panagrellus silosoidus, and banana worm is Panagrellus nepenthicola. The scientists are most probably laughing at me right now, but I don't have a clue. Now, of the three species, microworm is just slightly larger than Walter worm, and it's at least double the size of banana worm. So banana worm of the three species is the smallest. But in truth, all three species are microscopic. I mean, you're looking at most probably a millimeter in length. Now, why would you want to cultivate microworm? Now, they're an excellent first food for a lot of fry species, especially beeters, killifish, and a lot of egg-laying species. The microworm wriggle in the water. They are tiny and they attract a little fry, and it gets their feeding instinct going, so they start feeding straight away. The good thing about keeping microworm is that they're extremely easy to cultivate. It's basically set them up and leave them. You don't have to worry about them every single day. Now I'm going to show you a very easy way to set this up quickly. You'll have microworm to feed your fry within a couple of days. Now the first thing you need for setting up a microworm culture is porridge. Any porridge will do. This is just a cheap oat mix, even baby porridge. Like I said, you can try any porridge, it's not going to make a difference. So what you do is you take some of your porridge and you mix it with water. Now a lot of the sites will tell you you need to use boiling water, dechlorinated water, etc. Now I've been doing this for many years. You can just use cold tap water. It's not going to affect the worms whatsoever. It might make mixing of the porridge a little bit more difficult, but seriously, you can use cold water, it's not an issue. So what you do is you mix the porridge in with the water until you get a thick paste. Now what you don't want to have is a watery paste, because that will end up smelling really quickly, and you don't want it so thick and dry that the worms can't feed on it, because ultimately the worms are going to form on the top layer of this porridge and feed off it. So I'm just going to mix up some porridge quickly and just show you the mix. So there's your little mixing bowl. You've got your oats in there and your water, and you just mix it until you get the consistency that you want. Now, if you're only doing 1 or 2 containers, use only a little bit of water and porridge, because otherwise you're going to end up with a lot of porridge that you can't use. Now I've got about 40 or 50 containers because I'm breeding my fish en masse and they need a lot of live food. So I go through a lot of the stuff. So that's my paste all mixed. It's not too runny and it's not too dry, just get it in between. Trial and error will eventually show you the mix that you need. Now the other thing you need obviously is a container to keep it in. I use these cheap microwave tubs. Now if you can get a deeper tub, even better, because what happens is when you put your porridge on the bottom, the worms will eventually start crawling up the side of the container. So the deeper the container the better, but I find this perfect for what I need. I go through so many worms that these are perfect for me to stack. The other thing is to put some holes. You can just see them. Put some holes on the top just to get some air going through. Do not put them on the side like you would do with other worms, because the microworms in a few days will start crawling up the side of this container, and if there are little holes on the side, they'll crawl out. Whereas on the top it's a bit more difficult for them. Another thing about these little holes that you're going to make in here, use a little pin to make the holes, do not make them big. Number one reason is fruit flies. Fruit flies will find their way to the porridge and they will lay their eggs in there, and before you know it you'll have an infestation of fruit flies. Now it's not such a big deal, because in fact you can feed the fruit fly larvae to your fish anyway. But the problem is that every time you open your lid, you'll have a swarm of fruit flies flying around. Now, I can guarantee you your wife will not be happy. So best not encourage fruit flies for your cultures. So what you do, you're going to put a thin layer of porridge into this container. Now, the layer that you put in shouldn't be more than 1 centimeter deep. Now remember, these worms feed on top of the porridge. So it's not like they're going to be deep inside the porridge, so you don't need a thick layer. You just need enough food for them to feed on. Now, in fact, for this small container, I wouldn't even make it 1 centimeter deep. Half a centimeter is perfectly fine. Now, the last thing you need is obviously your worms. If your local fish club or breeders in the area do not have any worms for sale, you can actually go to my eBay shop where I sell small little sample packs. Now, you do not need a large quantity to start. And I mean, even a minute quantity will have you going within a few days. So when you buy your worms and you see that it's in small quantities, don't panic. These worms multiply horrendously fast. Trust me, within 4 days you're going to have more worms than you'll never need. Now, I normally ship my worms in little boxes like this. I don't like sending them in envelopes because I've found 9 times out of 10 that they get crushed in the post office. Not just that, once they get crushed and the bags rip, all that will end up happening is you'll get a soggy mess coming through your door. And most of the time the post office won't even deliver it. So I send them in these little boxes to protect them. You'll get a little packet like this. It's basically got a very thin porridge mix in it and a lot of worms. You can already see the lighter color there. That's worms spreading across the bag. Now, you do not need much of these because these things multiply very fast. So all you do is you take your bag and you empty out into the center of your culture. If you can't, just use a teaspoon. Now, don't let your wife see you using your cutlery. Oh my God, you've got no idea the abuse you'll suffer. Don't even mention worms. When you get this through the post, just tell her it's fish food. Don't tell it's live. You're going to suffer for it. So don't even worry if you don't get it all out the bag. You only need a little bit. I've put it into the middle of the culture like that. You can just spread it along if you wish. Now, I guarantee you, in about 4 days, once this is settled, you're going to have more worms than you'll ever need. They'll crawl up to the sides. And when that happens, you can scrape them off with your finger. Or you can use a little Q-tip and just wipe them off. And you can put them directly into the tank with a little fry. Now, I know a lot of people are a bit squeamish about handling these worms, and yes, I suggest you wash your hands thoroughly when you're done, because the last thing you want is these worms crawling everywhere. I remember one customer emailing me once saying, help. What he had done was put this into an open container one night and didn't have time to get it sorted, and by the following day these things had crawled out by the millions. So once you have set up your culture, remember to put your lid on. Now, one final thing about these little worms is if you really want to boost the numbers and get them to grow fast, you can feed these with yeast. Now, they're already feeding on the porridge, but the yeast is like a little extra. What happens, they don't feed on the yeast itself. The yeast breaks down and they'll feed on all the little microorganisms and funguses and God knows what else grows on this stuff, and you'll have a population explosion. Now, in about a week's time, I strongly suggest that you start another container of these and transfer some of the worms from this container into your new container. And that way you will always have worms. So if you have 2 of these containers going, eventually you'll notice that one of the containers will start smelling badly. The liquid will become runny and it will really stink like a vinegar smell. As long as you've got a second container going, you'll be fine. Just chuck the old batch out and just start your second batch again. And you just keep going from there. I think I bought my original culture about 10 years ago and it's still going. So very, very easy. So just as a final thought, I'm going to spread some yeast. Just a very little, you don't need a lot of the stuff. Now I just use this Allison's Easy Bake yeast. Now this is one of my older batches. And this batch is almost done. Now I'll give you a quick tip here. If the batch hasn't gone moldy or hasn't soured that bad, you can just pour porridge directly into this and mix it in with what's there. And trust me, it will just grow really fast. So it's not always necessary just to start a new batch. You can just continue on with the old batch. You can see all the worms crawling up the side there by the millions. Now bear in mind that each worm is only about 1 millimeter long, if not smaller. You can see how many millions there are.